Maverick. Noun, unusual person. A visionary, leader, go-getter, an independent thinker. They see the vision for their life and pull that future towards them with an unyielding belief that things can and must be better. They achieve what most won't. Innovative, influential, daring, and direct, with a remarkably high tolerance for taking calculated risk. A foe to the status quo. This is Passive Real Estate Investing with Mavericks. Your host, Neil Timmins, has been involved with over $300 million in real estate transactions. He's a published author, commercial property investor, and real estate syndicator. This show is for those who want to learn how to earn passive income through real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Neil Timmins.
It's Financial Freedom Friday, and on this episode of Passive Real Estate Investing with Mavericks podcast, we are going to uncover what your financial freedom number is. Hey Mavericks, this is Ava Bouwkamp, and this episode of Passive Real Estate Investing with Mavericks is brought to you by Legacy Impact Investors. We are an industrial investment firm located in cash flow country, the Midwest. We strive to shield off risk and beat inflation, all while producing predictable cash flow. We curate real estate investment opportunities for busy professionals and other real estate investors seeking passive income. To learn more about what we do and connect with me, go to www.legacyimpactinvestors.com. Welcome to Passive Real Estate Investing with Mavericks podcast, where we provide actionable steps for you to grow your passive income and become job optional. It's Financial Freedom Friday, and I'm here with Neil Timmins. During this episode, you are going to discover what your financial freedom number is. For those of you who are new, I am your host, Ava Bouwkamp, and I love to educate investors about passive income from real estate. Before we open with today's episode, I want to ask you for a small favor. If you like what you're hearing, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the show so that you never miss a valuable episode. And if you love what you're hearing, please give us a written review. Also, be sure to check out the description of each episode, as we've packed it with thousands of dollars in free resources. Well, I'm here with Neil on this next episode of Financial Freedom Friday, and we're here to talk about passive income and learning about your financial freedom number. Neil, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, I'm really excited for today's episode. We wanted to do a deep dive into what is passive income. It's something that gets thrown around a lot in the real estate world, and we feel like a lot of people don't necessarily have a great understanding of what passive income is and how that actually can impact their life in a big, big way. So I like to start off with stats. I think people might be accustomed to that by now. So I found an article from Forbes that reported that nearly 194,000 U.S. employees have lost their jobs so far in 2023 over about 150 different major layoffs. So lots of people have seen their jobs cut or impacted this year. And that relates to our topic today because a lot of people have this false sense of security about what a job is. It feels like something it's going to be around forever. There's not going to be something that's going to impact your job. A lot of people wrap up their identities really heavily in what their job is. And we want to talk about how passive income can help you, perhaps if you were impacted by a layoff or if that's something that you're concerned about today.
Yeah. And I think past that, Ava, it's not just passive income and how that interacts and what that really can mean to you, but what you opened it with is one's financial freedom number. Really, what is that? What does that mean? And then how does passive income play a role as it relates to your financial freedom number?
Yeah, great. So before we get to that little nugget, we want to do some reframing around what the concept of a job even is. So work is a great thing. It's a gift. It allows you to pay for your needs, to take care of people in your life. It can give you purpose. It can help you serve a passion. It can help you give back to your community, benefit others. You can be an employer and allow other people to earn an income. And so it does a lot of great things. And so work is something that is super valuable. We need work, but it is an exchange. That's the reframing that we want to do today, is that your job, the income that you earn for the most part, is a one-for-one exchange. You're exchanging your time, your physical labor, your mental capacity, your talents for money. And jobs that pay less money, in some sense, imply that your time is less valuable to that company. So not in the sense that you as an individual have less value, but in the sense that it's going to be a lot easier for a company like McDonald's to replace a drive-through worker than it is for Amazon to replace their chief financial officer. Those are two very different roles, and that's why they have different income levels, but it's still an exchange of your time and your resources and your mental effort for money. That's what a job is. And a lot of times we don't really think about our work in that frame.
No, and you've got some options, but unfortunately, creating more time is not one of those options, right? It's our greatest non-renewable resource as humans. It is finite. But what can you do? Well, you can make yourself more valuable, right? Through improved skill sets. You can find an employer who needs your skills. So thus implying you're more valuable to someone else and who can pay you, right? More for those skills. Alternatively, you can find ways to make money that does not involve really this one-to-one trade.
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's important to, if you're going to go the route of making yourself more valuable, that you come up with skills that someone's going to want. You might be really good at juggling while riding a unicycle, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are therefore going to make more money because you have that skill. You have to have a skill that is valuable in the workplace, and that someone, you can also then identify an employer that is going to pay you more for those skills. So our better option is to find ways to make money that don't involve this one-for-one trade. So that is what passive income is. It is money earned without as much direct involvement, with minimal effort. It doesn't involve that direct exchange of your time for pay. That really is, in simple terms, what passive income is. The key is you can earn income without actively working. And for the purpose of this conversation, we aren't talking about opening up, a CD that's going to pay you 5% or investing in stocks. We're talking about alternative assets for the point of our conversation today. And so the importance of passive income can be summarized with 4 different benefits or things that it allows you to do. Right off the bat, pretty obvious, it allows you to increase your wealth. And wealth is important because it allows you to plan for retirement. You can build up savings. Maybe you're preparing for sending your kids to college and you're going to be helping them with those college payments. You can generate more passive income to then further invest in other opportunities. It can give you the capacity maybe to start a new business. Perhaps you're currently employed in a W-2, but you really want to go out and do, this other thing. Having passive investments can give you the freedom to do that. You can set up a fund for donations or for a scholarship. And it can also help you reach that financial freedom number that we have talked about. So that's number 1. It allows you to increase your wealth.
The second one is retire early if you want, right? Or perhaps retire your spouse. If you want to plan for retirement, or perhaps you don't even have a retirement plan, you're working through yet, passive income can create that. It can catapult you to get on that path. It's a wise plan for your financial future and ultimately to make sure your family is taken care of. You can retire a spouse if that's something you want to do. Having ultimately gives you flexibility inside of retiring on your terms and your spouse's terms.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about this at the top of the episode, loss of income protection. So we've all heard headlines about lots of layoffs this year, and no job is permanent. Loss of a job can often be outside of our control. Perhaps the business closed or they changed direction. Those are factors that we can't control. And that is actually a big risk. If you think about all of your time in being wrapped up and your income producing ability being wrapped up in one bucket, that is a risk factor. And so having sources of passive income allow you and give you some buffer where perhaps you're laid off, or you have a change in your salary, or you just want a higher salary than what's currently available to you. Passive income can help protect you from that risk.
The fourth one ultimately is it's a source of retirement income. So not only could you retire early, as I mentioned too, this is how you sustain retirement. It is an ongoing passive income flow, a stream of income that doesn't cease. So you don't have to worry about, did I save up enough for retirement, or whatever happens in retirement. For all of us, none of us get healthier as we get older, right? Health comes for all of us sooner or later, or your spouse, the family, and the loved ones that you care for. It's great to save, absolutely great to save. It's ultimately better to earn. And you don't need to draw down that pile of cash that you have saved over the years. It's ultimately having a stream of income that can help fuel that. Warren Buffett said that if you don't figure out how to get your money to work for you, you're going to work until you die. And so it's finding that passive income, the streams to fuel that.
Yeah. And that leads us straight into our key question today, which is, what is your financial freedom number? And if this is a concept you're unfamiliar with, at its most basic level, your financial freedom number is the amount of passive income you need in order to cover your living expenses. Basically, it's the number where if you wanted to quit your job today, you had enough passive income coming in that you would have the freedom to do that. So Neil, I want you to just share a little bit about personally for you how this financial freedom number has impacted you.
Oh, in a large way. First, it gives you a frame of reference. And I think about this and I'll share a little more myself, but ultimately, how it impacts my whole family. Kiyosaki created a game called Rat Race. It's ultimately how to get out of, what he calls the rat race, your financial freedom number. And he created a game for ultimately kids, but it's a fun game for adults to be able to go through this. It is my kid's favorite game. So anytime my wife, she does not love it as much as we do. It's ultimately a game that takes like 2 to 4 hours in many cases. So anytime my wife is gone, kids are like, all right, it's rat race time, Dad. It is on. Knowing the number is of most importance, because if you know exactly what you have to do, in this case, what you have to achieve in the form of a number, your mind, it's a laser target. You know exactly where you're going, and then the how is much easier to fill in, because there's a multitude of ways in terms of how one can achieve that. And ultimately, when I achieve this, there's a weight that lifts off your shoulders to go, I can do what I want, when I want, how I want. For those who know me, of course, that means more of what I love to do, which is do real estate and help the team and help investors achieve their goals.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. And it brings up another saying, which is you manage what you measure. Mm. And for some people, coming up with that financial freedom number might be a light bulb moment to say, wow, I have been subject to lifestyle inflation, or I've allowed myself to become subject to lifestyle inflation, where you realize, I feel like my income is increasing. I'm earning more than I did 5 years ago, but it feels like I am no more financially stable than I was when I was making way less than I am now. And so coming to know that financial freedom number can also be a way to realize, hey, I'm not being a good steward of my money. I am allowing myself to spend money on things that really are not important and that aren't going to get me to where I need to go.
Yep, you're absolutely right. To me, there's 3 big ways in which one can achieve passive income through real estate. The first one is rental properties, whether it's a house or whether it's a commercial property, just the bucket of rental properties, if you will, direct ownership of property. And for me, from a passive investor standpoint, what would one have to do? Well, in order to do it, you ultimately become an active investor, because it requires a big learning curve. You're going to have to go through that curve to understand how do you take things down, how do you buy it correctly, and how do you manage it correctly. Second piece is it requires a large upfront outlay, cash outlay of capital. You're concentrating that risk ultimately into a single property, in many cases a commercial, or just a handful of properties in residential. Then you've got to manage it. And so some of the management in some cases, super simple. Some of the management in other cases, very challenging, very complex, very hands-on. It's not ultimately a passive route from direct ownership of property.
Yeah, absolutely. Another way to generate passive income is through crowdfunding real estate or REITs, real estate investment trusts. And this is an option that is more accessible to a lot of people because it's something that, REITs they're like stocks. They're on Wall Street, and that's something that it's more normalized than going out and perhaps buying real estate on your own or investing in a syndication. But there are a couple of downsides. Often crowdfunding and REITs are associated with higher fees and lower relative returns. Something that a lot of people also don't consider is there's a lack of control. You don't get to pick what properties that REIT buys. You don't even know necessarily what assets that REIT owns. And so there is a lack of control. You're not able to align your personal risk level and risk comfort with what's being acquired inside of that portfolio. You also have a lack of access and direct access to the team. So there are people in those structures who are making decisions that you have no access to them. You're not able to ask them questions. You're not able to evaluate their assumptions in a way that would make you feel comfortable with the decisions that are being made. And finally, you also have no direct ownership. You are buying essentially a piece of paper. So that REIT owns property and you don't share in the ownership of that property. You really own, like a stock, you own a piece of paper.
The last one, the third one is syndications as a limited partner. Maybe Ava, tell me a little about and share with everybody, what are the benefits of investing in a syndication as a little partner? What does that really even mean to begin with?
Yep. Great question. So syndications, if you're not familiar with them, the best way to think about it is you have, they're called general partners or operator, and they're the one doing all of the active work. They're talking to leads, they're evaluating deals, they're throwing deals in the trash can, they're making decisions about financing and really doing all of that active legwork to find a property, put it together from a lending perspective and an insurance perspective and a property management perspective to really have that final product that someone can invest in as a limited partner. And where the limited partners come in is they pool their funds together. They decide, I like this property. I like this general partner team. I want to invest in that deal. It's a good fit for what I want from a return perspective and from a risk perspective. All of that limited partner and the general partner contributes money as well. They have skin in the game. They contribute funds, and together as a collective team, really, they buy that property. And then the limited partners earn a return on the money that they have invested. And then when the property is either sold after a number of years or it's refinanced, they'll get all of their capital returned to them, and then they're able to go out and invest in other opportunities after that. And we like this model because it gives investors a lot more control over their decisions. Number one, they're able to know and vet and evaluate that sponsor, that operator team at a very personal level. They can pick up the phone and call them. They can send them an email and say, hey, I've got questions about this. What are your assumptions on this? And so from an investor perspective, it gives them a lot more control to say, I'm the one making the decision on, do I invest with this team or not? And that gives them, once they're invested, it gives them direct access to ask questions, to say, hey, how's it going? They'll receive regular updates, quarterly updates on how the property's doing, how the business plan is going. And so it can give them a lot of peace of mind in terms of their knowledge of, hey, I know that a new tenant moved in last week. I know that they're making these updates to the property. And I know that these other 3 business objectives still have to be met. It also gives them some tax advantages where their passive losses from investing in the property can offset their passive income. If they qualify as a real estate professional, they're able to access, far more of those tax advantages directly. But for the average investor, those passive losses from depreciation can offset the passive income that they earn from being invested in real estate. Once again, it gives them control. They can decide what asset classes, what asset types to invest in, what markets to invest in. They're able to invest in, say, I live in North Dakota and I want to access properties that are down in Texas. I can do that if I'm invested in a real estate syndication. It allows them access, as an investor, you have access to larger deals and higher quality properties. If you're going out on your own, you might be limited to, I can only buy this one house that's worth $150,000, or I only have, I might have less than that. I can buy a house that's worth $100,000 and put $25,000 into it for repairs. But when you invest in a syndication, often you're investing a much smaller amount, 50 to 100, $200,000 into one deal. And that allows you to, spread your risk across multiple investments. You can invest 50,000 here, 50,000 there. And so it gives you control and helps you spread out your risk. And then you also have direct ownership in the entity that owns that property. And so once again, you're in the driver's seat as an investor in a syndication, in the sense that you're driving that bus to make the decisions to where you want to invest. But then you also have the added benefit of not being involved in the day-to-day property management. You're not involved in the day-to-day decisions of, do we paint the walls green or do we paint them blue? You don't have to think about all of those little nitty-gritty details once that property is closed, but you're still able to benefit from the GP, that general partner's knowledge and experience. Because if you're investing with a qualified operator, they will have done this before. They will have experience operating and executing on properties. And so you can shortcut, take advantage of their knowledge, but still have access to deals that you wouldn't have access to on your own.
You and I have talked offline, and we came up with a handful of really misconceptions, 3 big ones out there about passive income. For me, myth one is passive means no work at all. And it's ultimately, it's just not the case. One needs to be knowledgeable. Don't just blindly trust everyone. Do your homework, do your research. The work involved up front, will be some education. You're going to do some education, some lifting to get yourself up a education curve. Listen, learn, listen to podcasts like you're doing now, read books, maybe find somebody in this space, have coffee with them, ask questions. How do you uncover and identify really good people to work with, red flags that are out there that exist? So myth number one, it means no work at all. Just not the case.
Yep. Myth number 2 is that passive income guarantees instant wealth. And that's something that you see a lot of sponsors, I think, putting out irresponsible marketing. It gives the impression that real estate is some sort of get rich quick scheme. And wise wealth is not built overnight. You can't fabricate it out of thin air. It will take time. So you really should be throwing up some red flags if someone is giving you information or giving the impression that this is some sort of get rich quick scheme. It is absolutely not, especially in real estate, which is an illiquid investment. It's not like the stock market. You can't just pull your money in and out super fast. The true financial power of real estate is appreciation, and appreciation takes time. But that's one of the great things about it, is you're able to have your money in a real estate property over the long term. And even in an inflationary environment, you're able to take advantage of that inflation and not only protect your initial investment, but grow with the appreciation. But appreciation doesn't happen overnight. It takes time.
Myth 3 is passive income is risk-free. No investment is risk-free, right? But you need to choose your hard, choose your pain. Is it more painful to stay in your job, to rely on one income, to be stressed about retirement? To quote Jim Rome, how risky life is? None of us get out alive. Everything has risk associated with it, but how much you take on and how you manage that ultimately is up to you. There are multiple ways to seek out sound operators, sound investments to reduce that risk and have total confidence in what you're doing, or to go a different direction, to take on much more risk. So, really the myth is passive income's risk-free. Nothing is, but ultimately it's up to you to choose that path, about what you want to take.
Yeah. And I think my closing thought is on this myth myth number 3, that passive income is risk-free, is that first thing you said, no investment is risk-free. Investing in the stock market is not risk-free. And one of those, that biggest risk factor that I think is really apparent is most of us don't even know how the stock market works. People look at it like this slot machine where I put money in and then magically, 30 years later, when I retire, all of a sudden there's just like this pile of cash that the fairy godmother brought in from the stock market. Somehow magically, poof, all of this money is here. We don't know. Most people have no idea how the stock market works. It's too complicated. There are so many levers. There are so many people making decisions, and the interests that are involved and they are incentivized to do all kinds of different things. The government provides different incentives that none of us have any control over. And so that lack of knowledge, that unknown is a huge risk. And as an investor, it's your responsibility to get educated, to learn about what your risk comfort is, what you want to be invested in, and to have control over, do I want to support those companies? Do I want to support things that are going on Wall Street, or do I feel more comfortable investing in a property down the street that I can drive by if it's in my market?
If you knew what your financial freedom number is, if you know what it is, you're ahead of 99+% of all other Americans in this country. Just by knowing what's it going to take each month in, month out, in passive income, to exceed your monthly expenses. You do that, you're way ahead of the curve and well on your path to financial independence.
All right, that wraps up our episode, this latest episode of Financial Freedom Friday. And so we want to leave you with, figure out what that financial freedom number is. If you don't know what it is, do the math. It won't take you very long. And like Neil said, that'll put you ahead of 99% of other people in this country.
To our listeners, pat yourself on the back. You guys have made it to the end of the show, and most people never finish what they start. If you receive value from today's show, be sure to share it on LinkedIn, your Facebook page, or your social media platform of choice. Subscribe to never miss a valuable episode in the future. And if you found value in today's episode, give us a thumbs up with a positive review. If there's a particular topic you'd like to hear about, well, I want to hear from you. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn. The link to my profile is below in the show notes. You can connect with me there for more valuable content.